Ruth asked me to come and speak about an art project that I've led over the last couple of years called Gift to the City. I am a potter, a ceramicist, but before I talk about that project, I just wanted to spend a few minutes to talk about beauty and art and why I believe as a Christian it matters, and it matters in terms of our faith and church life. So throughout history, philosophers and theologians from Plato to Augustine to contemporary thinkers like Tillich have spoken of this ancient triad of goodness, truth and beauty. And these are the transcendentals that describe the nature and character and presence of God. And for the last few hundred years, the church has concentrated almost entirely on truth and goodness. But sadly, beauty has almost entirely slipped from the evangelical consciousness. And yet, as an artist, I stand on the territory of beauty, and I bear witness to its power. I believe that we all have this transcendental desire within us, or as C.S. Lewis calls, an inconsolable longing. And I believe that art and beauty speak directly to that longing. Beauty beckons us beyond the immediate to the more, to something eternal. Beauty echoes the presence of God. Beauty brings the taste and touch of our Creator's heart, so that when we encounter beauty, be that in music, art, nature, science, the embrace of a friend or family member, or in the kindness of a stranger in a moment of devastation, we encounter God. One of my favourite stories in the Chronicles of Narnia, I don't know if there's any fans of the Chronicles of Narnia, my favourite one is The Horse and the Boy. And there's a scene in that story where the boy is riding his horse through a dark forest at night, and he hears a noise, and he calls out into the darkness and says, "Who's there?" And it's the voice of Aslan, who represents God. And Aslan says, "It is I." And the boy says, "Well, how long have you been there?" And Aslan said, "I've always been here. It's only now you hear my breath." And that is the role of art. It awakens us to the breath of the divine. It might seem like an odd passage of scripture that I got Ruth to read, the road to Emmaus, but I think it echoes that point, that all the ways that God is with us, and sometimes we don't have eyes to know or see, and sometimes it's an awakening and you think, oh, I was held all this time, he was here all this time. And when Jesus broke the bread, they knew he'd already been walking with them for miles, chatting to them for miles. And that is the space that I'm so interested in as an artist. How art can just be that moment of awakening, and someone feels something transcendental that they never thought of before, and they realise, oh, I'm being held. Art is not about answering questions, and I think maybe that's why the church has maybe struggled with it in the past. The theologian Walter Brueggemann says that the role of the artist is not an explanation. The role of the artist is to disclose, to reveal, and to show what has not been seen or said until that instant. To show that there is a season of loss, not to be avoided, a hope beyond, and a deep time of brooding between. So my project that I've been involved with, I make what I call scarred pots. You can see on the screen. They're inspired by kintsugi. Kintsugi it's so well known now, I probably don't even need to describe it, but it's an ancient Japanese technique of mending broken pots with gold. And as a result, the pot becomes more beautiful and more precious. And lots of charities and churches have started to use kintsugi as a metaphor of healing, the beauty of restoration, redemption, and it's a really powerful metaphor. I don't break my pots the way the pots in kintsugi they tend to have been broken and then mended with this gold resin. But I take a knife, when I throw this perfectly formed pot, I take a knife and I deliberately scar it. And the reason is this started as a very personal gift to a dear friend over 10 years ago. A dear friend of mine was going through breast cancer surgery. She was only 30 at the time. And she's an artist, and I wanted to make her something that spoke into her story. And so I made her this little scar pot. I called it my visual poem. It was my way of telling her that her scars were beautiful because they told her story. And her story was one of hope and healing and tremendous courage. But it went from a very private gift to becoming a public art exhibition across 3 cities. Just move this on. Our little flicker's not working, so I'm just going to move back and forth. So I was part of a visual arts trail in Manchester. It was run by Passion Art. I don't know if anyone went on that trail in Manchester. So Passion Art is a Christian arts charity. I'm trustee to the charity. And it explores how art and faith impact our everyday lives. And the mission of Passion Art is to recover beauty, stillness, and compassion at the heart of our communities through creative acts of creativity. So it's a great mission statement. And a few years ago, the leader of Passion Art organised a visual pilgrimage across the city of Manchester. And she placed art in both sacred and secular venues and brought people into those venues to experience the art in a very contemplative way. And it was during Lent as well, so she really planned it meticulously, and it was a beautiful, reflective walk to go on. You could either pop out your lunch break and just do a couple of venues, or you could spend the day and walk the full visual arts trail, the full pilgrimage. And she knew about this little scar pot I made for my friend, and she asked me if I would make it into an exhibition for the Passion Art Trail. So I made 40, because it was Lent, and I thought 40 days of Lent, so I made 40 little pots, and I placed them on the altar of St Anne's Church. So I don't know if you're familiar with St Anne's in Manchester, it's right in St Anne's Square, right in the hub of the city. And I placed them there, and I walked away from the exhibition, and I didn't really think anything of it. And then suddenly, my inbox started to fill up with messages from people that said, I saw your pots, I too have gone through cancer, I too have gone through surgery, or I am suffering a bereavement, or I'm struggling with my mental health. And I suddenly realised that art has this capacity to take some of our deepest and most gut-wrenching emotions and give them colour and texture and form. And by doing so, it says, you're not alone. And there's real power in that, wonder-working power. And what I realised when people looked at my scar pots, it wasn't my friend's scar that they saw, it was their scar, or the scar of their loved one. And then after the Manchester Visual Art Trail, I had them exhibited in a couple of other exhibitions, one in Macclesfield, where I'm from, and one in London. And both occasions, the same thing kept happening. People kept telling me their scar stories. And then I had this mad idea. I just thought, what if I just put these pots out in the wild for people to find? What if I just put them up, on bus stops and outside train stations and on park benches and public gardens? Would it still speak into people's deepest stories? And so, I'll just put this on. In April 2021, I got some funding from an arts festival in Stoke. I pitched the idea to them and they were crazy enough to go for it. And we placed 40 pots on the streets of Stoke for people to find. And I put them, as I said, on park benches, public gardens, and I'll just show. I put them in little boxes like this. And it's just a little bit of protection because they're so fragile. They're made from porcelain, thrown on the wheel. The lustre is 10% real gold, it's a third firing. So they're really, there's something radical about putting something out that is very precious, and you're putting it out on the street, and there is that level of fragility. So I put them in these little boxes. They had a little card to explain what the work was about. I simply said, if this speaks into your story, it's a gift for you today. And there's a QR code where you could write a comment to say where you found the pot, how the pot connected with your story. But that was optional. Some people find that really cathartic, and some people it's just a private thing for them. I was overwhelmed by the response in Stoke. I had people quite literally running up to me in the street, telling me what this pot meant to them. I also love this idea of blessing a town or a city with beauty, because I really believe that beauty matters because we matter. And the idea that anyone could find it, that you didn't have to walk into an art gallery or an institution, anyone could discover this little pot and speak into their story, and that the art and beauty isn't a luxury, but that it's a birthright. We all deserve it. But yeah, this idea of blessing a town with beauty, so I just called it my benediction in porcelain. It's just this idea of blessing a town. What would that look like to bless a town with beauty? And what I love about kintsugi is that it bears witness to our stories. The gold highlights the scar. It draws attention. It says this happened. And I believe that our stories are sacred. It also speaks of new life and new beginnings in our deepest pain. And I believe that whenever there is hope of new life, there is a little whisper of the resurrection. Anne Lamott, another Christian writer, says the best works of art are like the symphonies of our experience, signalling what we didn't know was true, but we do now. In art, we feel the breath of the invisible, of the eternal. After Stoke, the following year, I got funding from Passion Art, and I scaled up the project. I went from 40 in Stoke and I made 120 for Manchester. I also partnered with another artist called Micah Purnell, another Christian artist. He's a text artist, so he uses words. He often uses billboards. And Micah's work is sort of anti-consumerist messaging. So from the moment we wake up in the morning to the moment that we go to bed, we are told by every message, we are bombarded by messaging telling us that we are not enough. We are not enough unless we buy the latest smartwatch or phone. We're not enough unless we have the right skincare regime or body shape. And so he designed these little plaques that just said, you are enough. And it's that kind of counter-consumerist message to say, you are worthy of love and belonging. And I felt that Micah's work harmonized a lot with what I was saying in my work, and so it was a good partnership. So he designed 120 of those, and I made 120 of mine, and we placed them on the streets of Manchester over 2 weeks. And then this is how the title Gift to the City was sort of birthed. And a friend of ours is a designer. He designed the logo. We made them into little cards, and the motto being hidden art, found stories. Because I had 120 to hide around the city. I started to get very creative, as you can see on the left-hand side. I placed one on the hand of I don't know if you've seen the Emily Pankhurst statue in Manchester. I placed one in her hand, and interestingly I got a message on the website, because as I said, they all come in these little cards and you can go to the website and upload a comment. And I got a message from a mother who had been teaching her 5-year-old daughter about the suffragettes. And she had taken her into the city deliberately that day to show her the Emily Pankhurst statue, and her little 5-year-old found the pot, and it's now in her bedroom. And that was a lovely story because it's very light, and I don't tend to get light stories, as you'll hear. So it's nice, it's a mix of community that we're finding in pots. The top right-hand corner is Manchester Cathedral. Because I had 120, majority of them were on the streets, but I placed some inside buildings. So Manchester Cathedral, St Anne's, because they've always supported the arts. I'm trying to think where else I put them. Oh yeah, Manchester Art Gallery as well. They took some. And I also donated a number to charities within Manchester. So I gave some to Maggie's Cancer Centre, and I placed them around their gardens, inside their little waiting rooms. Macmillan's in the hospital, I put some there as well. And this one on the right, the bottom right, is Hope for Justice. It's a charity that works with human trafficking, and I donated a number to them as well. And just the idea that they were being directly given to people who are bearing deeper scars than any of us could imagine. As I said, a lot of people comment on the website, but in Manchester, a lot of people would have left a message on social media. So that happened a lot. They would take a photo, they'd write a little message. And what I loved about being involved, getting the churches involved in the city is this guy found one in St Anne's Church, and he said, amazing gift to the city, Rachel who ceramics, kintsugi. The priest Paul even made me a brew. Good peeps. And what I loved is that so I would give out clues every day. I would say I'm going to be in St Anne's Square today, and so a lot of people were coming in to look for these pots. And I bumped into a lady in St Anne's who was looking for the pot, and she said to me, I've never been in here. I've lived in the city all my life and I've never been in here. And I said, it's for you. This space is for you. And I just love the idea that by placing art in these quiet, contemplative spaces, secret spaces within the city, to say to people, regardless of what you think of religion or God, this space is for you. And if you ever need a minute, it's here. Ruth and I have had lovely conversations about this before, about how church can be places to rest one's soul. And I just loved the idea that my project could help people experience the sacred spaces within their city. And what was great is the team in St Anne's got right behind it. With the vicar there, as soon as somebody came in to look for a pot, he had the kettle on, the tin of biscuits was open. And he was having phenomenal conversations with people, because all you have to say is, why do you want the pot? And suddenly you get a story. So it was great that they really got behind it. Over the years I have displayed my pots in churches, sometimes as part of a sort of special service that they have, or during Lent. It's quite popular. And one vicar said to me that he's had more reflections based on these pots than any sermon he's preached. And there is something about art that can speak on a deeper level in words. And I think some of the greatest mysteries in life will not be revealed in words, but they'll be revealed in rituals, and they'll be revealed in arts and beauty. Just go to the next slide. Another church that's really been involved in this project and have collaborated with us and really supported us is Chapel in the Fields. I don't know if you've heard of Chapel in the Fields. It's a little Methodist church near Dunamasi. And Kevin, the minister there, he used to be a furniture maker before he was a minister, and now he's combining these two passions. And if you go into that little Methodist chapel, where you would expect the little kitchen to be in those chapels, you open the door and it's a full woodworking studio, all kitted out with the latest laser cutters that you can imagine. And he takes groups of men, mostly suffering bereavement, and they're referred to him through GPs, so through social prescription. And he'll take a group of men and he'll teach them how to make bird boxes and all sorts. And they've even made my bookshelves, actually. And through that, they begin to open up and they begin to talk about their grief. They do lots of interesting things. They do lots of quiet days, lots of reflective days. They do leadership quiet days as well. And him and his team made Micah's Euronav plaques that he placed around the city. And they also made I had a little bit of extra funding for Manchester, and I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if the box that I placed the pots in was also beautiful? So the boxes that I were using were just, little cheap boxes from the works. So they made, I think about 30 of these kind of bespoke boxes. They were made by these men, and apparently while these were being made, one man who'd been coming for weeks and weeks and weeks started to talk about his grief and shed tears over these little boxes. And I love the fact that these boxes that held these stories and held this pot were anointed by these tears, that the box tells a story of a scar, and the pot tells a story of a scar, and the person who finds it also is bearing a scar. And it's layers of stories. They're made from recycled pews, which I also love. So yeah, they're beautiful. So whoever found these 30 were very fortunate because they got a double gift. They got the box and the pot. Then last May, I took the project back to my home, back to Belfast. And again, it was funded by Passion Art, and we partnered with an arts festival there, Cathedral Quarter Arts Festival, and they were really supportive and helpful to us. It was really emotional taking it back home. It's always emotional taking it back to the place that formed you, but also to a place that has known scars very deeply and has known what it means to repair. Northern Ireland is a place that understands the fragility of repair and the beauty of repair. So, I also partnered with another artist. So Mikey came with me again. He did 100 plaques. I put out 100 scar pots. And then I partnered with a third artist who painted these little abstract paintings on reclaimed wood. So bits of pallet board, bits of wood she'd find in the skip, and she'd sand it down and then paint these little abstract paintings. And she left them on the street. And what's beautiful about that is this is the friend whose scar inspired the project in the first place. So it was her mastectomy scars. So it was just really emotional to bring it home and to partner with her, and it was bringing the project full circle. Okay, that's next slide. As I say, a lot of people upload comments on the website, but a lot of the time I just hear the stories on the street. I bump into people who are looking for the work and they tell me within seconds why. As I said, I believe our stories are sacred. And there's times when I hear someone's story on the street, I feel more like a priest than an artist. Although I'm beginning to think all artists are priests. When we were in Manchester, I bumped into a lot of women my age who came into the city to find a pot, but not for themselves, for their terminally ill mothers. It was so common in Manchester. And one woman found it for her mum who's going through stage 4 lung cancer. And when she found the pot and she brought it back to her mum, and then she took a photograph of her mum in the hospital bed holding it. This photo is in Belfast. This was a nurse who works with patients who are going through cancer. and she just loved the idea, the concept behind the project, and she was going to take it into the Lord's the next day. But I think one of my standout stories in Belfast was, it was the second day of the trail, and I had put a scarlet pot down on this little bench outside an iconic pub in Belfast. And this older woman came over, and she just scooped up the pot and she held it, she cradled it for a long time. And I went over and I introduced myself and I said, "Well, hi, I'm Rachel, I'm the artist. Did you know about the project, or did you just stumble across it?" And she said, "Rachel, I have been looking for your pot for 2 days." And she called it a pilgrimage of hope. That was her words. And she said that she'd lost her husband after 35 years of marriage. And searching for this pot, she said, is what her grief feels like, which is just searching and searching for something beautiful to hold. Some sign of new life or new beginning in her pain. And we had this beautiful conversation on the street, what I believe is a secret conversation. And she uploaded a story to the website. This was quite a cultural difference, actually. In Stoke, people's stories were one sentence. In Belfast, they were 2 pages. So she uploaded a really long, beautifully, very articulate story about her grief. And she said that after she found my pot, she went home and she started to garden for the first time since losing her husband. And then she said this little phrase that moved me deeply. She said, "I attended to new shoots." And there was something about that sentence that I just thought was incredibly hope-filled, that attention to new shoots. And I'm not sure how to define hope, but I often think it must be something like standing in the darkness, wide-eyed, wholehearted, attending to new shoots. And like that boy in the darkened woodland in Narnia, hearing the breath of the divine whisper, "I've always been here." I finished Nick Cave's latest book called Faith, Hope Incarnate. It's a fantastic book if you're interested in arts and faith. And he talks about the morality of art. He talks about art as a force for good. And its role is to bring solace to the world, a form of spiritual sustenance and kindness that may go in some small way in helping people with their lives. Well, that is what I have hoped Gift to the City has done. That it is a small gesture of hope in a hurting world, a little balm to the soul, and a small whisper of the resurrection. Just the last slide. I'd love to continue this project if I find funding. I'd love to keep doing it. But at the moment, it's turned into a workshop, believe it or not. So I run these immersive workshops where we hold the pots, we listen to the stories I've collected, and people make their own scar plot as well, and they reflect on their own scar and their own wound. I've done it in a number of charities, churches, a philosophy conference, even in conversation with a corporate organisation at the minute. And I realise we all have a scar.
Keep watch, dear Lord, with those who work or watch or weep this night. And give your angels charge over those who sleep. Tend the sick, Lord Christ. Give rest to the weary. Bless the dying. Soothe the suffering. Pity the afflicted. Shield the joyous. And all for your love's sake. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine